Very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're catching us from. Welcome to Acfim Talks. Yes, another episode today, the Friday 13th of May. And with me, I'll be introducing two guests to discuss money, politics, and performing arts in Uganda. But your host, as usual, is Felix Kafuma. And thank you for catching us again same time for a show that comes every week, every Friday, and you can be part of this conversation. You can get notifications. You just have to subscribe to our YouTube page, Acfim Uganda, and also you can subscribe to our social media platforms. They'll be flashed on the screen. And then you'll be able to be part of these conversations. And today, again, we are here discussing a very interesting angle which looks at money, politics, and performing arts in Uganda. But before we start, and before I introduce my guests, let me provide a bit of a background to this discussion. And you'll all appreciate that time memorial music has been used as a political tool in South Africa. In South Africa, it was used to fight apartheid. In Zimbabwe, it was also used for self-rule. Uganda's elections, I think, let me talk about Uganda's elections because people are familiar with when you talk about music. In terms of music and politics, people easily relate that with Uganda's elections, and you've seen our elections being colored with thematic political songs. We had Stamina by Eddie Kenzo at some point, Tubonga Nawe by All Stars, Toka Kwa Barabara, another rap which was sung by the president himself at that point in time when he was contesting, Tuliyamba Rengule, which has been recent when again Bobby Wine then was contesting for the presidential bid, and we had Ameria, among others. There have been quite many, and also globally. We've seen democratic reversals giving rise to what we call populist leaders that are not necessarily mainstream politicians. So you have musicians, politicians, musicians, actors, and sports personalities that are rising into political spaces. We need to take a very interesting discussion in this angle to understand why is music gaining prominence? Why now? What is the contribution of music, but also performing arts generally in the politics of the day? And with me, I have two distinguished guests. Let me start with the lady, Sophie Combia. Many of you, you've seen her before. She has graced the screen. She's been around. She's a musician and entrepreneur, a psychologist, and a social activist. She's also currently the chairperson policy for Uganda Musicians Association. You are most welcome, Sophie Combia.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you.
Can you please center you're a bit tilted to the right on my screen. Try to center the camera so that you are balanced.
Like so?
Okay. No. I think that's better. Although you reduced the screen, but we shall work with that. Then also let me introduce. Okay, fine. We can work with that. Sure. Let me also introduce Geoffrey Ekongot, who is a creative professional, over 18 years of experience in the music industry, creative communication, done a lot of work around live streaming, multimedia, graphic design, and web development. And Geoffrey is also a conceptual thinker, done a lot of work around creative technologies. He's served before as a talent consultant for the global music television channel MTV. I think you remember that one, MTV Base. He's also a co-founder and the former chairperson of the Uganda Hip Hop Foundation. Also served as a talent consultant for British Council Uganda. He's currently the chairman. Is it chairman or chairperson? I'm of late they say chairperson. The chairperson of Uganda Musicians Association Electoral Commission. Yes, that body is undergoing a very interesting phase of elections, and I think we shall have to talk about that as well, Geoffrey. But besides that, Geoffrey is also is very active in the civic space, and is currently the chairperson of Donor Center Home for Autism. Geoffrey Ekongot, you're welcome. It's good to have you on set.
Thank you very much, Felix, for hosting me.
Yes, it's great.
It's good to be here.
We've been in another space, and it's interesting that there was a time when you were behind the scenes, and now you are also on camera with me. Okay, let's
very
get
interesting.
This, off the ground. We are discussing money, politics, and performing arts in Uganda, and the background which I gave before I introduced the two of you. It's important that we help the viewer out there. First of all, before we come to Uganda specifically, what is and I'll start with you, Geoffrey. What is explaining this trend of music taking center stage of the politics of the day? And it's not just in Uganda, but globally, you are seeing musicians influencing the politics of the day. What is explaining this trend, including the growth of populism in politics?
Thank you very much, Felix. I think there are several factors that are contributing to those major changes. We are at an interesting point in the history of Uganda, and musicians have been caught in the mix. Musicians traditionally are not interested in politics, except when things are not going right, or when they feel like their livelihood or their careers are at stake, and they feel the need to play a role. I think there's a lot that has been going on lately in the politics of Uganda, and some of these things have spilled over to the music industry. For years, musicians have lobbied for their interests so that government can take care of their interests, but it appears that their interests haven't been attended to the way they ought to have been. And in the same space, they have also been touched by the general issues, the economic situation that is around, and the political situation around the country, and they felt the need to step in and play a role. So I guess circumstances are shaping the situation at the moment, and the rise of musicians into politics. For the first time, musicians are totally appreciating the full potential of their influence, and they're trying to put it to the test.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me bring in here Sophie Combia. Sophie, you're a musician, and apparently you are very actively participating in the politics of the day. You are already, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you are contesting as well in the current ongoing elections that are taking place for the association. So, and this, I think this is very timely to ask you this question, because you've had Geoffrey trying to lay a justification why now, why are musicians joining the political arena, and let me throw this to now the politician herself, the king herself. Why all of a sudden are we seeing this rush for politics by musicians? Sophie Combia. Sophie, are you there?
First of all, I'm not contesting for presidency.
Oh, you're not contesting?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
my apologies.
You hear me? I'm saying, first of all, I am not contesting, but I contested. I have to join politics. I contested for women councillorship, that is OC5 Kampala Central Division. But that was way back, because I did not go through. Okay.
Correction. But since you contested, it means that within you, you are also a political animal. So what's explaining this drive, this dash for musicians joining politics?
First of all, where we've joined politics as musicians. Way back, politicians used to use musicians to pull their crowds so that they may sell their propaganda to the crowd. So the more we got next to those politicians, can I say we were interested also? We got the interest of joining politics. Because one thing, if I can, you can use me as a musician to call for you people, for you to sell your propaganda. Yeah. So that way I thought maybe I can also go on. We are selling ourselves as well. The question is, why now? I'm going to join this phrase, I'm connecting it to the money issue. One, it is a money generating platform. If I contest, we're looking at people like we have. Am I on? As if I'm getting lost?
Yes, you're on. I can hear you. I can see and hear you. Sophie, maybe.
Proceed, Sophie, I can hear you.
Okay, now this is how primarily money is the key driver to whatever we do. Though as civilized people, we had to set boundaries and limits, but in this case, we lost it to politics. Artists' involvement in politics started when politicians started paying artists to perform on their rallies, like I said, to sell their propaganda to the crowd we pulled to them. This gained fame and power to gather crowds in the raising their interest in politics. Now, because of the big sums of money that we were paid as musicians, I'm going to say it was a bad habit to live along the creativity. We are focusing too much on politics instead of being creative as artists.
Okay. That's quite interesting. You presented a very it's a plausible angle. I think even me, if I was a musician and I was joining politics, the motivation would be the money, because we've seen how politicians during the electoral period really go for a kill. And just let me bring you in here because she's referring to a scenario which is very common during elections, where you have musicians composing songs for particular candidates, performing those songs during rallies for those candidates. According to Sophie, it's business. But in there, are there those who also have personal convictions, or it's purely business?
That's an interesting question. I think to answer that, we need to appreciate what politics is about. Politics, if you take 2 steps back, is really about sharing national resources. And every time musicians get closer to politicians, all they hear is plans and ideas on how these politicians are going to influence the sharing of these national resources to their constituencies. However, if you've noticed or paid attention to the politics of Uganda, that rarely happens. So when we talk about music and business, or musicians looking at this as business, it's become one and the same. They realize that the politicians come and make promises on how they will equitably share these national resources so that everybody benefits, including themselves. But it doesn't happen as planned most times. So they're thinking, why don't we go to the table and take a piece of the pie for ourselves? What's the point of letting someone do that for us, and then they never deliver? They rarely deliver. So we might as well get on the table, take a piece for ourselves, and hopefully also make better decisions in splitting this pie for everybody.
Wow, Sophie. Okay, now in the event that let's say it's business, yes, but also you are now entering into a territory of politics. Remember, as a musician, you have a fan base, and this is where now I come to you, because I've always wondered when sometimes musicians, because if you are composing songs for a certain candidate and sometimes performing on their rallies, it's difficult for people not to look at you as a fan or a supporter of that candidate. So in view of the above, doesn't that in one way affect your career as a politician? Being seen paying allegiance to another candidate. Remember, your fan base is a combination of people, those who may support the candidate you are on stage with, and those who don't support the candidate you are on stage with. How do you reconcile this? Doesn't that affect your fan base? And doesn't it also affect your career?
It is 100% affecting the career negatively, because like you said, it is going to divide the fan base. Yeah. Remember, when we perform for different kinds of people, coming from different sectors, coming from different political affiliations. Yeah. So I say it is. You've seen people perform. I'll give examples, and I'm not regretting giving names. Yeah. You've seen people like Bebeku, people like Big Eye coming on stage, and they've been thrown at bottles, like chasing them off stage. That is because they chose a side. Yeah. Either for selfish interest reasons or personal reasons. So they already divided their fan base, and it has affected.
Did I lose Sophie? Okay, I think I lost Sophie. I think I lost Sophie to network. Geoffrey, can you chip in there? I know you have a lot of experience when it comes to this industry. Does this affect the career of the musician? Does it affect the fan base? And also, how does it affect the industry itself?
Most definitely, music is supposed to be one of those things that is pretty much non-partisan because everybody listens to music, and the fans many times feel hurt when their favorite musicians, take sides with us, political leanings that they do not agree with or they do not support, and it is causing a bad precedent in the music industry and splitting funds, and some artists are actually losing funds. An example you've given of a Big Eye being kicked out of certain events. Obviously, some of these people kicking them out are disappointed fans who love their music, but they don't agree with these political inclinations that they are advocating for. However, you will need to appreciate that. Why is this happening? Musicians work very hard to make their music, and they invest a lot of money and time to make this work, and they hope to earn a living from this. But constantly, this doesn't seem to work. Performing for politicians has become an alternative source of income, and most especially if you align with a political interest that is powerful enough to give you a reasonable amount of money. Most people are willing to take the risk of losing some funds. After all, to them, funds are really about, they're like customers. To a musician, fans are customers. And if you can lose some customers in exchange for a big customer who can cover that gap, it sort of makes logical sense for such musicians. I mean, take a look at Bebe Cool's career. You may notice that he hasn't been performing as often as he would have loved to in the last 3, 4, 5 years. However, he's gotten some really major paydays from this other new big customer who seems to be covering the gaps. So in the end, it's really like a business decision where it comes down to money. If you feel that you will take a chance on a bigger customer whose paydays are really worthwhile, you will make that decision. But I know that if the government was making more effort to ensure that the livelihood of musicians is not threatened and is also protected appropriately through the necessary policies, laws, most musicians would be happier being on stage and not being involved in politics.
Thank you so much, Sophie. You went off as you were trying to make a point. So let me throw you back in and give it a go. So yeah, is it good for the industry? Is it good for the career? Is it good
Sorry about
for
I
the
had to change
funds?
my position. Now, like I was saying, actually, Jeff brought it that.
Yeah, proceed.
Like I was saying, it is really bad, and it is I call it a selfish. I call it a selfish point of view. Calling it from a selfish point of view. Now, I was giving examples of Bebe Cool, Big Eye, and other NRM. We call them NRM musicians. They've been denied chance of performing. Like their fans are throwing bottles. You've seen them being beaten bottles on stage. Yeah. Where is it leaving their career now? Normally, the political leaders are going to last for 5 years, and what is going to happen to them after 5 years? So that's why I call it very selfish.
But isn't it a right to belong and to a particular political group or support a certain political group? Is there anything wrong they are doing? Because before being musicians, they are individuals with rights. So what is wrong by supporting a certain candidate? Does that mean that they are violated? Is there some kind of like a pact between the fan base and the musicians that they are not supposed to be seen supporting a certain politician? Someone help me understand here. What is their crime?
Yes, it is their right to support a particular party. But then where are they leaving their funds too? The way we've been groomed, like we the musicians and the audience, the way we've been groomed, we have been taken to a point where we have to be aggressive. We have to be, what's that word? Yeah. Like you overlap someone and you cross boundaries. Yeah. You overlap someone and you're ready to fight for him, to lose your life for him. That is what is happening now. Yeah? That is what is happening now. So I say, yes, it is their right, but to an extent, they are selfish, not thinking of the industry, where it is not taking the industry. When we look at the young generation, people like a lot of the young generation look up to them in this industry. A lot of young boys and girls would like to be like Bebe Cool. So in the quench of being like Bebe Cool, they're going to take his footsteps. I've seen a lot of boys in studios recording, instead of being creative, doing their work that is going to sell them even before their political parties or something. They're all looking at producing songs to promote the parties or something. But after the elections, trust me, there's nothing like politics that is going to be moving ahead. So it is putting the industry down. It is their right to support, but to an extent, let them not cross the boundaries. Let them not cross the limits.
Okay, thank you so much, Geoffrey. I think you've had Sophie, but still, I'll also throw this to you. When does one draw the line between being a musician and also being a voter and a political animal and a fan? Aren't we being too harsh on these musicians?
I think the overall principle is about boundaries. Even rights have limitations. Rights are not absolute, they are not unlimited. Rights, you have a right to support whoever you support as long as you exercise that right within certain boundaries so that you don't have create conflict with others. That may include conflict with your fans, that may include conflict with anybody else. The point is to try and manage how you exercise your rights. I've had, for example, discussions with Big Eye as an artist, and I've told him, you support NRM, and I totally have no problem with that. But if you can still support them and still go and vote for them during elections, but must you put your entire career at risk while in the process of supporting your party?
Exactly.
Is it worthwhile for you to lose your entire career to be shunned at public events at the cost of you supporting your party? There's a price to pay for certain decisions. I know that it is also wrong for, say, fans to throw bottles at artists during events and because they do not agree with their political affiliations. But I also think that it's prudent for one to weigh their decisions before they make them. Just to make sure the decisions you make do not come at a very high price, unless you've decided that your life is going to be about that. If you've decided to be a sacrifice and sacrifice your entire career in the name of supporting your party, and that's your agenda as a human being, maybe that is another way to look at it. However, I personally don't think it's worthwhile, and one should exude some sort of ability to appreciate limits and boundaries in exercising rights.
All right. You're still watching Acfim Talks. I'll be reading the comments in the second segment of this show. So for now, let me allow the discussions to flow. We are discussing money, politics, and performing arts. Now, let me come to you, Sophie. We are talking about sacrificing career for political benefits. And now we've seen, I need you to make a comment on now the trend of political appointments of musicians. I think we've seen of late some musicians being appointed into political positions. We saw in the recent, I think it's in the recent 2021 elections, we had the presidential advisors at that point in time picked from the music industry, Catherine Kusasira and I forget his name. I know the stage name, Buchaman, but I don't know the other name. You help me. How does this affect the industry? Is it a good thing? Looking at it, depending on who has appointed you, can it be an opportunity for the industry itself? Since now people are in positions of power, since you talked about politics is about who has access to resources. Is it a good thing? Are there benefits in it? Is it a bad thing? Where does it leave the music industry?
Now, for starters, I want to quote this. I want to quote one of the generals. I was in a meeting. Then one of the generals stated like, you musicians once sent us back to the village if you are not very strategic and putting pressure on you. That was General Saleh in one of the meetings. That's what he said.
Say it again. Quote
the statement. I quote. He said, you musicians once took us back to the village. If we did not put too much pressure on you and we are not strategic, you once took us back to the village. What did he mean? Now, let me not beat around the bush. Let me put straight to this. This is all because Honorable Chakulani, yeah? He stood and came up for president. Yes, he had the followings, he had the powers, he had the, we call it masanyalas to some extent. Now, we're looking at musicians now being, is it pointed out to be presidential advisors? And then I pose the question, why did it happen way back when what's his name? Is it Chiza, Honorable Chiza Besigye, who was campaigning. Yes, there are no musicians in the platform, nothing like that kind. So this comes after Honorable Chagulanyi. He's a musician now. Now we are looking at all these people becoming Judas of the industry. We call it Kwetega. You go up there with a statement, tell him, I know how I can bring him down. I know how I can put him off. I know how. Then you become, they pull you closer to them. Yeah. This brings in the Gulu saga. Every musician that went to Gulu was about, we are taking ideas on how to put down the Honorable Chagulanyi and staff. So I'm saying this because we are having musicians cropping up to be big politicians. Yeah. So that is why we get musicians to find a way of putting fellow musicians down. I'll submit that.
All right. Geoffrey, this behavior of the state, I'm using the word state carefully here, but intentionally, of the state, because when you say the state, now with the state, it's difficult to draw a line between NRM, the party that is in power, and the state. So this behavior of the state, looking at the political appointments of musicians, is it a response to the Kyagulanyi bubble that swept the politics of Uganda? Or there's something deeper than that we don't see?
I think the state, maybe let's be more specific. The party in power has finally acknowledged and recognized the influence that musicians wield, and they know that that influence is a double-edged sword that can be used for purely entertainment purposes, but can also be used for other purposes, including political influence. And having recognized that power, they now realize that it must be controlled, and they need to take strategic decisions to control that influence. And the biggest symbol of that influence is the rise of Bobi Wine, obviously. And the rise of Bobi Wine has put a proper seal on that influence, and they know that there is potential for more Bobi Wines if they do not do something about it. And the strategies in place, including appointments of political advisors, for example, the Catherine Kusasiras and Butchermans of this world, is just some kind of entry-level strategy to see whether it could help tame. They are using it two ways: one, to tap into that influence to see if it can be used as a counterforce, and also to show that they supposedly care and are trying to bring musicians to the table. The reality is that I think they are dealing more with the effects, not the cause. The cause is much deeper than Bobi Wine. The cause is that the ground is no longer level. It's no longer level for not just the music industry, but it's the music industry that has power that they can put to use, because they speak to the people directly, and they engage the majority of the country directly through their music, and they are taking the opportunity to their advantage. And we hope that the government can take a deeper insight and realize that it makes more sense to understand the cause, and the cause is the imbalance mostly in the economic benefits or opportunities that the country has to offer to the government that has to offer the rest of the country, and musicians are just trying to fight for their space. And I believe people like Bobi Wine, because I knew Bobi Wine long before he stood. I don't think he, in his wildest dreams, he imagined he would have been a candidate for presidency, and let alone wield the level of influence he does right now. But they let these circumstances play out to their conclusion, and here we are. But I think it would be prudent for government now to step back and revisit the deep causes of what has led us here, and do the needful. It only makes more sense if they keep dealing with the effects. The cause will continue to deepen, and the status quo will be maintained. More musicians will enter politics. More musicians will exercise their influence in new ways to create opportunities for themselves.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go for a short break, and when we come back, we resume our discussions. I'll also be reading some of the comments coming through our social media feeds through Acfim Uganda's YouTube page, and Facebook Acfim, and Twitter @Acfim. Let's take a break and then come back and continue the discussion.
Welcome, my people. A cup of coffee, please. There is tea, everything. The snacks are on the way.
Yeah, thanks, but the reason that's why we are here, our people need different services. We at least need an ambulance at every center.
My sub-county is the farthest. We used to depend on the former MP's vehicle, but when he lost his elections, he took away his vehicle.
Of course.
So what does that mean?
Use your budget as a district to procure the ambulances.
Oh, if I could, I would. But unfortunately, government operates differently.
I'm saying, Chairperson, this is very serious and urgent.
Yes, I know. And why are they called local leaders then?
Local government.
You people, who sent you here?
I know, of course. We are concerned citizens who are watching people dying every day.
We've lost our beloved ones just because of poor health services.
Something has to be done.
You are right. Something has to be done, and very fast.
Yes.
That's transport for you. Go back.
But
All your concerns are taken care of. I will handle.
But
Have a
Chairman,
safe journey.
Thank you so much.
but this man seems to undermine our cause as to why we're here.
No, don't misunderstand me. This is just transport, no strings attached.
Chairman, we came here to discuss and find solution to our problems. But it seems you don't want to engage with us. Let's go and mobilize people, and you will see how serious we are.
Good citizens, let us always hold our leaders accountable. Leadership is a service, not a privilege.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Welcome back from the break. You're still watching Acfim Talks, and we are discussing money, politics, and performing arts in Uganda. With me in the studios, I have two distinguished guests. I have Geoffrey Ekongot, who is a creative professional, and also I have Sophie Combia, who is a Ugandan musician. We're discussing and trying to understand why is there dash for musicians in the political arena. Before we went for a break, I promised that I would look at some of the comments coming through our social media feeds. I think there was a comment that maybe if Patrick helped me flash that on the screen, that was coming through from past, where Heyo was asking, what is the line? Is there a line between loving somebody and having selfish interests? Maybe we shall come back to that, and Sophie will help us to draw that line. And there's another question coming through and it's coming directly to Sophie is where the music industry in Uganda stands compared between South Africa during apartheid or Jamaican music in times of slavery. We have to compare and find out where Uganda stands, because I think also we are at a point in time in Uganda's democracy where we can question where is the music industry in standing up for some of these injustices that we see happening, the torture and all that. Maybe let me start with that before we can proceed. Sophie, can you respond to that question from past? We're here.
I will start with the last question.
Okay.
Jeff Papa, what is the meaning of munching? What's the meaning of munching in Uganda? Is it kuswankula kind of, yeah?
Kuswankula.
Is that
Yes.
right? Yeah. Now,
Yes.
sorry, wherever I'm getting. Most of us, the musicians, we support, yes, we get it is a money generating platform. But there are a lot of musicians who are badly off. We get money up there and we start munching. Kuswankula for these young people. It is your right to eat, yes, but it is bad when you munch. When there are angry people around. So what we're doing now is dividing the industry. Yes, it is okay to support, like it is okay to love someone, but to a limit. Yeah?
I get you. Yes.
You love when you're not respecting my liberty, my rights or something. So the line between loving someone and supporting someone. It is that munching issue.
Okay.
Can I come in to say something?
Please.
Yeah, just to support her point, I think what she's trying to say, some of these musicians who have been paid by these politicians they have been showing off in a way that is arrogant and braggart, and they have triggered envy and jealous and in the process created hatred. You see this recipe of arrogance and bragging about getting so much money, just in a country like Uganda, where the majority are poor, including your fellow artists are poor.
Including me. Don't exclude me.
Yes. So this triggers jealousy, envy, and most obviously hatred. And it's well-deserved hatred, because you can't be inconsiderate in this. If you're lucky, if you're blessed to have something more than your neighbors, don't go showing off that you have. If you want to show off, then share. If you're not willing to share, then keep it to yourself. That's the whole attitude that she's trying to deal with.
All right. But still in the same breath, there was a question. I think I'll also add a spin to it. We all know how instrumental music in South Africa was in fighting apartheid. We saw also how instrumental music was in for example, in Zimbabwe, for self-rule of Zimbabwe for a long time. But also, I think you threw in an example of Jamaica. Why is it that in Uganda, because we all live in the country Uganda right now, we are living in, we are seeing injustices, the things we're talking about, people who are doing badly economically, socially excluded and all that. But why do we have less voices of musicians singing about these injustices? Why is the industry shying away from singing about the real issues that affect people? And then they go, and it's not just the music industry, but even the performing arts. You see, when you go to watch comedy, you see they act on the lighter issues, but the real socio-economic problems are not necessarily focused on by the performing arts industry. What is the problem?
Now, Felix, I can see you want us to get good chiboko here. You know how the system is, like, seriously. You talk about something, you stop from being to perform. Your music is stopped from playing on radio. You've seen this here.
Yes, but I thought you were in that industry out of conviction. You are in a society where you are the voice. I mean, when you draw the line between survival and standing for what is right, I think, let me bring in here Geoffrey.
I think conviction only happens when you're alive. If you cannot stay alive, you can't hold any convictions. So I think most artists are taking the position that first, I need to stay alive. How does an artist stay alive? They need to be able to perform and earn a living. They need to be able to have their music played so that the fans can know that it exists and be able to come to their concerts or buy their music. Now, with a state that has a very heavy hand, any attempt to move in a direction that tries to express your convictions, you will be dealt with a very heavy hand. That includes your performances will be normal, your airplay will be normal. So I think this is the obvious situation that is happening. So the musicians that want to hold their convictions are the ones that are not that have alternatives for survival, and so that even if the state blocks their performances, blocks their airplay, they still have alternative options. I mean, take a look at Bobby Wine, for example. I think he's doing well. He has alternative sources of revenue. He has a mass following that probably can still support him even without the performances. And he's probably capable of performing even outside Uganda. And I think that privilege is not available for very many musicians. And so musicians are concerned about the current political situation and the economic situation. And they do appreciate, and those who have the power to do it continue to do it in whatever capacities they have. But the many out there who may want to add their voice to the current social and political issues are afraid, like Sophie has mentioned, and they have been cornered. I think that's probably what's happening.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's. I think many Ugandans have gone into what we call the mode of survival, survive another day, and they wait upon God to deal with the situation. Geoffrey, I'm still with you now on specifically on the issue of you are the current chairperson for the Uganda Musicians Association Electoral Commission, right?
That's right.
And you are busy helping the industry organize and hold their elections and to have a new leadership structure there. But I want to understand from and I'll come to Sophie as well. But let me start with you. How significant are political parties influencing this process?
I think what is happening is that musicians are trying to get organized, and the elections are a part of that process. And organized in the sense that they are trying to build the music industry. For a long time, we've been operating from an ad hoc sort of approach, every musician in their own corner doing their own little thing. And for the first time, they recognize the power of working together. And these elections are part of that ongoing process of reorganizing the music industry. The politicians have recognized the power of the musicians, and musicians getting even more organized is probably perceived as a potential threat or a potential opportunity. So they do realize that they can't just sit back. They must play some kind of role. And the typical role is to, in elections, is endorsement. Just like in regular political government elections, businessmen tend to mind their business throughout the year, but they do realize that a lot of their opportunities don't just come purely through business decisions, but a good number of their business opportunities come through also political influence. And typically during elections, they also make some steps to show support or endorse certain politicians, and so that they can position for the future. So at this point, if there have been any signs from any politicians expressing interest in the UMA elections, it's probably from that strategic point of view where they are positioning for the future. They believe that if there's even a small chance that musicians are going to grow their influence in the future, they feel they ought to be a part of that influence. Otherwise, it may work against them. I think that's what I can observe.
Okay. Sophie is talking about endorsement, but someone was telling me, hash corridor talk, that I think it's beyond endorsements. It's also some political parties are actually bankrolling candidates in the elections. Is this something you've come across?
Yes, and I first want to make a disclaimer, Chairman Tongova. But the truth is, I have to say this. To be honest, we only have two parties in this Larry with carrying on, in these campaigns we're carrying. We have the NRM and NUP. But should I mention names? Anyway, let's go with it.
Please mention.
We have Bebe Cool as chairman of NRM musicians. Yeah, I think chairman, you've seen him around endorsing NRM candidates, talking ill against others. Yeah, so this is why we go. This I call brother stabbing a brother. What we're doing is selling the industry out. Because after this election stuff, where is the industry going to be? You look at those guys going to, okay, NRM leaders, NRM red guns or stuff. Then they were like, you see, the policy board is full of NUP guys, so and so is NUP, and we guys are left out. You guys, we need money, give us money, we need to go and do election, we need to make sure UMA is NRM. This I call really bad, because what you're doing is you're being Judas of the industry, you're selling off the industry. I want you to think beyond the campaign. I want you to think beyond this, what we're doing now. The industry, what's that? We found the industry there, it is going to stay. So kindly, you guys stop being selfish.
Okay, Geoffrey, you wanted to weigh in on the matter. Apparently, according to Sophie, there are two dominant political parties influencing the processes: NUP, yes, National Unity Platform, and NRM.
Well, like you mentioned it, there's that hush corridor talk about the influence. The NRM hasn't supported the UMA elections directly. I have heard they have picked interest in some candidates, but they haven't communicated with UMA, the institution, directly that they are doing that. So I can't really confirm. However, I have seen, like she has mentioned, Bebe Cool has stood out directly and endorsed one of the candidates for presidency, and he has mentioned some political insinuations here and there. But also Bebe Cool historically is known to have very strong opinions often. And at the beginning of these very elections, he had stood out. He was against one of the candidates, and also was against the very candidate he's supporting today. But I think along the way, I agree that these political affiliations are beginning to influence the music industry. We hope that this is a temporary thing during just the elections, because the real work of building the music industry goes way beyond these political alignments. The music industry has a lot of issues that need to be dealt with, and these issues have to be handled by musicians. And whichever musician comes to the leadership of UMA has to face these issues. They need to appreciate that these issues go beyond politics. They are issues of policies, and they need to use their influence to make those policies work to the advantage of musicians.
Are these endorsements coming with also the parties that are endorsing, financing those political candidates, those candidates in the association, the elections that are being held, organized?
Sophie has mentioned that two parties, that is NRM and NUP. Officially, we have not been approached by NUP or NRM that they wish to support specific candidates. There is no communication that has been made officially. I have not heard from Bobby Wine's camp or about interest, apart from an endorsement that was made to one of the candidates, that's King Saha. But I think that endorsement is more from the context of Bobby Wine as a musician, not from the context of the party. I strongly think that's the context, because these musicians, they come a long way back and they've been friends for ages. But obviously,
he
stated that
he's supporting as a musician, fellow musician. That's all.
There you go. So this endorsement, from my own appreciation, it comes from that background as fellow musicians supporting a musician they've worked with for ages. That's purely what it is. But obviously, you can't stop people from misinterpreting this. And also, certain names come with certain weight, and they're always, that weight is always treated as a double-edged sword. So whereas he may have come in from a music background perspective and even stated it clearly, there are others who believe that his political side is going to play a role in these elections, and they are not taking chances.
Okay, I still on that one as we wind up. If you have two dominant political parties in the elections, whether directly or indirectly, doesn't that kind of like split or polarize the industry itself?
Personally, this is my personal view. I think these interests are really short term. They are just a wave. This wave, as soon as the elections are done, this wave is going to die down, because the truth is that the real politicians that need to play a role in the music industry don't care about the music industry. They care about their political interests. And until musicians actually stand up and use their own influence as musicians to make a claim for their stake, for their side, which is very clear. The musicians have been singing about their interests for ages. They want better laws that influence their livelihoods, that help them to reclaim their livelihood that is being stolen by third parties who are not playing any active role in the creation of their works. And these are basic demands they've been making over the ages. If politicians are serious about interests of musicians, these are the things they should come out clearly and stand by and take action on. But it's clear this is not the case. So this is why I'm saying, if there's any political forces, they're just a small whirlwind that is going to die down in a couple of weeks or months.
All right. As we come to the tail end, there was a question that came from Abel. If I remember very well, was trying to say that that the narrative that most politicians lack ideas and manifestos to sway voters on their side is thus making them resort to using musicians as campaign gurus. A comment on that one, Sophie, in 1 minute. Also, I'll give Geoffrey to comment on that one before you go for the last question.
As if I didn't get the question.
The question is about the fact that the motivation why politicians who have nothing to say, they don't have a manifesto, they don't have an agenda to sell to the voters, resort to using musicians who will just come and engage the crowd, wow the crowd, and that's it.
Okay, they actually come on stage and start dancing with a musician. Musicians come up with 1 or 3 words saying like Jefu, Jefu, oh yeah, Jefu, that things of that kind. The statement is really, really true. So that's what they do. What does that mean? Musicians have we have power to rule. We have power which we don't know that we are supposed to, which we don't know how to use. Yeah. The statement is really true. Most of the politicians come without knowing what to say. So they use musicians to sing it along, sing it loud, things of that kind. So I say it is positive.
Okay, even the head of state had to go to the studios. Please proceed.
I think the politicians have ideas, and for ages they've written elaborate manifestos, but they've never delivered on these manifestos. They rarely deliver on these manifestos. So the electorate has lost interest in reading their manifestos, because they are not worth the ink they are written on paper they are written on, and they need to find new ways to convince the electorate. And musicians are that tool that has come into play, because the electorate has lost faith in all these fancy manifestos and ideas that they put together but never really implement. I think that's the case.
Okay, all right. My final question, which each one of you will share. What is the future of this industry, especially within the current politics of Uganda? Starting with you, Sophie. What's the future?
I see us growing high because of all this that has happened. The government has come up to regulate our sector. So for any growing sector or something, there are more thieves, selfish people. But I think we are getting in the light. I see the positive side of it, and we're really happy, and I think we're going to get there. The government stood up, it's starting to regulate the industry. Unlike other days when we were most of the acts they are self-made, they're not being taken care of. So with this government interference, I think it is a positive one.
All right, there you have it. Geoffrey, what's the future? What do you see?
Well, the future is that musicians have power to influence a nation, and that's the cart. The cart is out of the bag. They have recognized this, And they are going to continue using this influence as long as the status quo doesn't change. If the status quo changes in their favor, where, for example, we have a better music industry, musicians are able to earn a good livelihood from their music, and they are able to monetize their works, then more musicians will naturally gravitate back to the music industry because that's where their comfort zone is.
All right, thank you so much. Indeed, it's time. This is the time for the industry to get organized and influenced as the bloc. We have come to the end of the show, and with me I had Geoffrey Ekongot, who is a creative professional, he's a conceptual thinker, he's also a civic space activist. He's a man of many colors, and it's good to have you on set again today. I also had with me Sophie Combia, who is a musician and entrepreneur. We were discussing money, politics, and performing arts in Uganda. We will catch this discussion again at some point. I myself, Felix Kafuma, was the moderator, and wish you a very great week ahead, a very good weekend ahead. Stay blessed, take care, and be safe. Live responsibly. Bye-bye.